Hi, I'm Mary Beth Stapleton, Manager of Family and Community Partnerships for Harford County Public Schools. Welcome to the Parent Academy Real Talk, Getting to Know the Board of Education. With me today is President Jansen Robinson and Vice President Rachel Gauthier, here to talk with us about the Board of Education. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you both today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here.
Of
I'm
course.
sure they're very busy.
HCPS, this is like really what we wear to work.
Exactly. And that's something that we're going to hear about, right? We're going to hear about how our Board of Education members actually have real day jobs too. We'll hear more about that. So to get us started, I would love to have both of you give your background to parents, a little bit about you and about how long you've been in Harford County and what made you think about becoming a Board of Education member. So I'll start with you, President Robinson.
Well, thank you. So just a little bit about my background. I a number of years, let me put it that way, in law enforcement. And the way and how that relates to school is that I served as the chief of security for Lincoln University, DC Public Schools, and Baltimore City Schools. And I've done other things as well. I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I've been in Harford County since 1991. Moved here from Georgia. Big difference.
Yeah, well, that's and I you also you live in Harford County so that's what 30 years now.
Don't ask me to count that.
Sorry, I'm not now. But I think that's a long time for sure. Yeah. Wonderful. And how about you, Vice President Gauthier?
I have been here. We moved up here. I'm from California originally. Mm-hmm. So that's like where my family is and all of that. And then I came out here when my grandmother was dying, actually, to be with my mom, and ended up meeting my husband and stayed. So we've lived in Harford County since, it's been almost 20 years. It's been, I think, 18 or 19 years. But we have two kids, one of whom is 14 and goes to Havre de Grace, and one of whom is 11 and goes to Southampton. And so back a number of years ago, my daughter was really interested in what was going on in teachers' raises and things like that. And that's how I got involved in
So your daughter helped you become an advocate.
My daughter, I was already a PTA mom.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And I mean, it was fine. And, you know.
So you were a PTA mom at Southampton?
Prospect Mill.
Oh, Prospect Mill.
Yeah,
Very
when they were
good.
in elementary school.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And I hear that's a doorway into the Board of Ed, right? That a lot of our members have been previous PTA members. So
yes,
that's a good entryway.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I'm a school counselor for Baltimore County
Okay.
schools. So I was already in schools and had been, you know, the PTA rep for the school and all of that. So, that's how it kind of came about. One of my girlfriends was like, hey, you know, they're looking for people to run for the Board of Ed. It's a new thing now. And
so you ran for the Board of Ed?
We both did. Yeah,
Okay.
That's how Jansen and I met.
Oh, okay. So both, because I know some are appointed, so let's back up a second, because parents probably don't understand this, right?
Yeah.
So some members are appointed, but
Yes.
then some members run.
Correct.
Okay.
So currently on this board, what we have is 3 appointed.
Yes.
3 appointed and 6 elected.
Okay.
And they match the councilmanic districts for the county council.
Okay.
So there's, you know, A, B, C, D, E.
Okay.
F? A, B, C, D, E, F. Yeah, sorry. Had to do it. So that we all ran in our districts that are, you know, where we live. You have to live in the district.
And then you represent the parents and the students in your district
Correct.
as a board member. Great. Okay. Well, that makes sense. And then when we're getting appointed members, that appointment comes from
the governor.
Oh, okay.
The governor. Currently.
Okay.
The governor.
Okay.
And there's a whole like application process and interview process. The appointed members have kind of filled us in on that, but they can be from anywhere. They just have to live in Harford County.
Okay. And then you serve a certain number of years, and then there's an election again or appointment again.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Very good. And then thinking about the role of the school board as you all come in, one parent did ask, you know, there's just to understand that relationship between the school board and the superintendent, right? So how do you supervise the day-to-day role of the superintendent administration, or you kind of advise, or just to get clarity around that?
We have day jobs.
Got it.
This is not, we have day jobs.
Right, right.
No, we do not supervise the day-to-day.
Got it. Okay.
Jansen, you can probably
So
explain that a little better.
while the superintendent works for the board, we really have a partnership. It's really a more like a partnership, and we work together in trying to make sure that we provide the best educational opportunities possible. But that's technically he works for the board, but we are actually partners in this endeavor.
Wonderful. Wonderful to know. And then in that partnership, thinking about kind of the structure, we as parents see you in the board meeting, but there are other times that you interact with school staff, and if you could kind of explain how that other part of your work in the day-to-day as a board member, again, you have your day job, but then how are you out and about in the community? What are you doing in addition to the board meetings?
So besides being known as my kid's mom, because that's, you lose your name at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, we go, like I've been invited to PTA meetings that are not for my children's school to talk to them. We've been invited to talk to various community groups. Jansen's really good about that. He goes to a lot of community groups that he can explain much better than I can.
Well, in addition to that, we do normal school visits. Those of us who can, again, we have a lot of board members, or several board members who have day jobs. We attend a number. I couldn't tell you the number of meetings that we attend, not just with the superintendent, but also with various members of the staff. If when a constituent has a question about a particular issue, board members take it upon themselves to find the answers to those questions by meeting with the subject matter experts, be it facilities or curriculum or what have you. So there are a number of those meetings. And then there are a number of committees that board members serve on. I mean, Rachel's on several committees, and they meet.
I was just on one last night. Yeah.
Wow. So it's a big job.
It is.
Big job.
Much bigger than they tell you when you're signing on.
And so it's more than just meeting twice a month, and they see us on the dais and the agenda item. We deal with the agenda item. In order for us to deal with those agenda items, there's some research, there's some background work that has to be done to prepare for that. Yes, and so parents may not see confrontation on the board, but that's because the confrontation has probably already taken place behind the scenes.
So those discussions and perhaps disagreement at times and problem solving.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I think when we see as parents, we see there's an agenda, and sometimes it says closed door or something like that. That's probably when those conversations might be happening.
Sometimes, yeah. A lot of those are things that we just can't discuss in public.
Got it.
Personnel stuff, you can't have those conversations. Legal matters, we can't have those conversations. So it's different kinds of things like that are typically behind the scenes.
And they are mandated by law.
Yeah.
So legally.
Oh no, we don't make it up.
There's another group making those rules. So President Robinson, you brought up the point that, on behalf of your constituents, which are probably in most cases parents or students, if there's a problem, you work to resolve it. If a parent has a concern about their child's school or an experience they're having with the school, one parent asked, what's the best way to resolve it? What do you suggest? Where does a parent start?
You start at the lowest level, and if it's with the teacher, you want to start there, because oftentimes a child or a parent may experience a problem, but the people who can best solve it don't know that it's a problem. So one of the things we want to do is to make sure that the folks who are closest to the issue have an opportunity to address it. Now, if it's not addressed at that level, then we advise that they take it. They use the step approach. If it's at a school and it's with a teacher, then you go to the principal. And if it can't get resolved there, then you go to the superintendent's office, and not there, then you come to the board. Okay. But we should be the last. We should be the last resort.
You're not the first.
No, we're not the first.
I mean, but there are plenty of times that people will reach out and send us emails, and it may not seem like we're responding, and we won't necessarily, but we will certainly, forward it to somebody and say, hey, can you look into this, and then get back to them and just, let me know what happens.
And I'm glad you brought up the responding part, because that's another question that came up from a parent. So as you have those public comments, and a lot of them are from parents, some from students as well, I've seen, of course, and you don't respond in that moment.
No.
Okay, but perhaps after, sometimes there's follow-up, or how does that work with public comment?
If people bring stuff up, because I'm Jansen will tell you, he usually sits next to me. I write notes all the time.
Okay.
Like, it seems I'm definitely one of those people that learns best and remembers best when I write stuff down. So I'm spending a lot of time when people are making public comments writing. And one of the things it'll be is, like, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm really curious as to what the answer is. So, hey, or sometimes I'll, type up a quick email. Hey, can you please look into this, or can you please find somebody to look into this? Because I don't necessarily know who it would go to sometimes. So
Right.
Eric Davis,
Our chief of administration.
lovely man. I absolutely adore him. But he gets a lot of emails from me like, hey, could you please
Check into
have
this.
a second?
So even though you're not responding back to them, you are listening, you are taking notes, and you're following up.
And the other thing is this: we shouldn't be responding from the dais.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why we shouldn't do that is because we want to make sure that we give factual information. So if a parent or someone brings up an issue, we want to do our due diligence, run it down to make sure that we provide not opinion, but information that they can actually use.
Okay.
And we sure don't want to tell somebody the wrong thing. Yeah.
Right, right.
know.
And sometimes from one parent, we had a question. Sometimes you might get conflicting, right? So one parent wants one thing. So for example, with the pandemic and the 100% virtual versus 100% back in, we had different parent voices around that, right? So
And
how
still
do you
do.
handle such differences, right? When everybody is wanting to advocate for their children and everybody wants the best for kids, but then they're just in such conflict.
Well, and that's part of it. There's no wrong answer.
Okay.
There's just no wrong answer. There's going to be, like my dad always told me, you're never going to make all the people happy all the time. It's just not possible. And in a situation like this where it impacts everybody in so many different ways, like, some of our families have lost jobs. Some of our families have lost homes. Some of our families are doing okay.
Right.
And they don't understand that part. Or, some of them are genuinely concerned. They have medically fragile children, or they have medically fragile adults in the home. And we get all of it. Like, we've seen it, we've heard it, we get it. Trying to make something and figure something out that is safe for the kids and safe for the teachers and, doesn't expose everybody to everything. We're never going to get it right 100% of the time, but we sit and listen, and whether they think we do or not, we do sit and listen. But we're trying to find something that gives everybody the opportunity to get the education that they need.
Right.
Virtual does not work for everyone. I'm the first person to say it, as would Dr. Bolson, I think. It doesn't work for everybody. It's not for everybody. I get that. But for some of our kids that really struggled at school, they're thriving.
Right.
This is a great environment for them, and we're seeing things from them that we never would have seen before in person. So for them, it was an opportunity, which is great, and part of what hustled on the, let's do the e-learning, the new virtual
The blended
school.
virtual, yeah.
Yeah, the new virtual school that's going to start in the fall, because so many really did do well.
Yeah, we did hear that the parents have said my child was thriving actually, right?
Exactly.
But then some did not. So yeah, it just depended. So thinking with that theme of parent involvement and thinking about advocating for your child and making sure they've got the best learning situation, one parent asked, what suggestions, ideas do you have? How should parents stay involved in their children's learning? So this year more than ever, we were thrown. So, I have a daughter, a freshman at North Harford. We were thrown into helping with schooling, right?
Yeah.
So now that we have this experience, right, how can we take this? What do you all think about taking this experience and how do we use it as parents? How do we continue to be as involved as we have been this year? What do you think about that?
So, Rachel can chime in, but I think that what we ought to be doing is this is what I do. When I've engaged some challenging situation, once I've gone through that challenge, I take the opportunity to do what I call an assessment. I go back and I look at what happened, what I wanted to happen, and what actually, what should have happened and what actually happened. And it's sort of like an after action to determine, and it's really a self-assessment to determine what went right, what went wrong, and what is it that I need to do? What did I learn from this situation? There are things, even look, COVID, everything that we go through in life is an opportunity. I think is a teachable moment for us. And this pandemic that we have experienced, it has provided some positive things. And we may not realize that today, but as we sit back and go through this and things become normal, if you will, we'll have an opportunity to do an assessment and to determine what aspects or what went right with this. How can we take what we've gone through and make it and do something positive with it? Think about this. When we talk about the virtual piece, we've learned where our deficit was. We learned that we had some deficits in the number of devices that we should have that we don't. We learned that where we had some gaps in our ability to reach out to people, have folks to take part in the virtual experience, and so when you look at those things, while they weren't high priority matters several years ago, now they are. And you'll see that there's efforts by both the state and local government to close those gaps, so that if something happens, and look, we can't tell you that something won't happen, but if something like this happens again, we'll be much better prepared than we had been. But I think that what I do, and I'm not preaching, I'm just saying that what I do is I do a self-assessment, and for me, so that I say to myself, how do I make this work for me? And so that's, I guess, Rachel, you can.
Well, I would say that I think that parents were given a very rare opportunity. Certainly not one that I ever thought I would ever have with my own children, to actually see what your kids are doing in school, know what it is that they're struggling with. I think that's part of where the advocate in all these parents has come out, because they've had the opportunity, not planned, certainly not wanted in a lot of ways. Yeah. But the really, I think, valuable opportunity to see what material their kids are working with, how they're working with it. They're seeing where their kids' strengths really have been. They've seen where their kids' deficits really have been. They know a lot more. Parents know a lot more right now than they did a year ago about how their kids need, more or less time management, more or less help with organization, whether or not they're intrinsically motivated or externally motivated. Like, do you need to promise them a cookie and extra playtime? Or, it's like, hey, Mom, I got this. I think we've seen so many things like that. And I do think that that's part of where, I don't just think it's COVID fatigue. I think that parents have really been able to advocate for their kids in a totally different way that they never had an opportunity to do before, because they have so much more information.
Yeah. This parent was asking also, though, that, they're still intimidated by the technology, right? They're still having a hard time connecting themselves through the technology. So, what they were asking, what do you think about parents that really are scared of that technology to stay engaged and to stay involved? And, I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but maybe
the phone still works.
There you go. Maybe it's the old-fashioned stuff.
The phone still works. The email still works.
Right.
Even at the height of everything being shut down, I know most teachers, my daughter's teachers gave it to her when she was in 8th grade last year, had Google Voice numbers. Like, if you're not understanding something, here's my Google Voice number. I can always call you back. You can call me and ask me a question. I had a Google Voice number for the same thing, for parents to call me. The phone still works.
Yeah.
Email. If you may not be like, hey, I want to be on It's Learning, but I sure can use my Gmail account really easily.
Yeah.
Do that. Okay. It's
just continue to advocate.
It doesn't. Just use your voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to wrap up, now that our time's coming to an end, any thoughts for parents or suggestions about moving forward into the recovery as, next week our elementary school students are going to be back 4 days, and then our secondary, some that are choosing to go back 4 days. Just a takeaway for parents that you really want them to know right now, thinking about.
There's so much, so many things that we have all gone through this past 12 months. To identify one or two things, and again, I go back to just sharing with people that the decisions that we made, we didn't make them in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. Those decisions were made in collaboration with folks, with not just school folks, but folks outside of the system. I would just advise them to just do what Rachel said: stay involved, stay engaged. I mean, it's not the big things that make the biggest difference. It's those little small things. And Rachel said something about she talked about the parents' involvement with kids like they've never had to do before. Mm-hmm. And I just say continue to do that. I mean, now that you know, you're sort of obligated to continue along on that process. Mm-hmm. If it would be different if you didn't know, but now you know what your kids are doing, where their weaknesses are, and where their strengths are, and then you know what it is that you need to do to support that, or to build them up where they're weak, and support their efforts, their strengths.
Yeah.
And I would follow up with that with give everybody some grace. Give your kids some grace. It's hard I know, it's hard. It's hard to give them some grace, but they're kids. They're going back into an unusual environment with unusual tasks before them in terms of staying distant, using plexiglass. Talk to them about those things too, because that's an important part of their day. Mm-hmm. Give them some grace with that. Give them some grace with, they're going to need a little bit of extra time probably for bedtime, because they are using more energy than they would have just, walking up and down the stairs maybe. Give the teachers some grace. Our teachers are doing yeoman's work, because they are not only teaching the kids in front of them, they are keeping track of the kids that are still on the computer at home. So it is a difficult teaching situation, and you can't know unless you've been there.
Yeah.
But just a little bit of grace, a little bit of empathy to everybody in the situation. We're doing the best we can. The kids, my God, the kids are doing the best they can. Please don't yell at your child about what they're missing or what they're doing. They don't know how to respond to all of it all the time. They've been through a lot. Kids process things differently. They miss some friends that aren't coming back because, their parents are keeping them home or whatever.
Right.
There's a struggle every single day with this, and it's okay, because we're going to do it. But just, watch the kids, talk to your kids, be the parents you've been and have done a fabulous job doing. Love them through it all.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
just the most important thing.
Well, thank you both so much. This is really helpful. The two takeaways I just heard from that were continue to stay as involved as you've been this year from President Robinson, and give our children and our teachers and our staff grace from Vice President Gauthier. And those are really just very simple messages, but gosh, if we could all put them into practice, we could move mountains. So thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
And thanks for joining the Parent Academy Real Talk. We'll see you next time.